Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. So, hopefully, in recovery, we're approaching romantic relationships differently than we did in our addiction. In our addiction, we were most likely focused on a couple of things: selfish motivations, so acting purely out of selfish desire, impulse, and without thinking about the other person's feelings or emotions. That doesn't mean we were heartless about the way we approached our relationships, although we might have been. But it means that we just cared for ourselves and thought about ourselves more than we thought about the other person. And now another part of that is we may have been acting out of fear in our relationships, fear of being alone, fear of dying alone. That's a fear a lot of us have to confront in recovery. And fear of being by yourself is a big fear for a lot of people in recovery. And it's the kind of fear that it might keep you in an unhealthy relationship. Hopefully, as part of a good recovery program, you will learn how to let go of that fear, learn how to be with yourself and how that's enough, so that you can bring your best to any relationship that you're in. And now it's not just our relationships with other people. Sometimes our entire sex lives need an overhaul as well. Some of us use sex in very unhealthy ways. Part of recovery is revamping the way that we incorporate sexual intimacy into our lives. Are we using sex as a way to connect with someone we care for? That's probably a good thing. Are we using it as a way to control others? That's bad. Are we using it the same way we use drugs, just to get a hit of something fun and exciting that takes our minds off life for a little bit? That's also bad. So we've got to rethink relationships when we come into recovery. And I wanted to talk about, and it's interesting because tonight I'm scheduled to talk to a group about relationships in recovery. And that was actually the topic that came up in Recovery 2.0 by Tommy Rosen when I was reading today. And so I want to read a little bit about what he says and then give just some of my own advice about relationships in early recovery, whether you are single when you enter recovery or whether you already have a relationship. So here's what Tommy says about the long-standing advice that people are given when they come into recovery. If you're single, don't get involved in a new romantic relationship right away. Here's what he says about it. It is a long-standing suggestion in 12-step society that people not begin new romantic relationships in the first year of recovery. Part of the reason for this is because relationships and sex can be amazingly distracting and may pull people's focus away from their program of recovery. Relationships also bring up powerful feelings that, under the best of circumstances, can be overwhelming and trigger emotional issues and unresolved trauma. And when things don't work out well, all manner of drama often ensues. Another important point is that in early recovery, we are moving through a rather broad and often rapid process of transformation. The version of us that we present to someone when we are 1 month sober is bound to be quite different from the person we are at 3 months or 6 months or 9 months sober. We have not settled, if you will, upon solid ground. Our identity is being built or rebuilt to a great extent. And this is, in my experience, very true. The change, the amount of transformation that I went through in the first 6 months of recovery, 9 months, and even in these first 2 years of recovery has been substantial. I even feel very different today than I did just 6 months ago. So, and this is a good thing. We want to transform. We want to grow. But It makes maintaining a new relationship or an existing relationship, it makes it so difficult sometimes when that amount of growth is happening with one of the partners. So a few things to consider if you are in early recovery, both if you have a relationship or if you don't. If you don't already have a relationship, then, I do agree wholeheartedly with the advice of don't enter a new relationship within the first year of early recovery. Early recovery is a time to get to know yourself. It's a time to focus on rebuilding who you are as a person and not having to validate your worth through other people. A lot of us did not feel like we were worthy of other people's love, or we felt that maybe we had too much self-worth. Early recovery is a time where we right size that feeling of worth, and not having to validate it through other people is an important part of that process. It's also very difficult to do the contemplative, self-reflective work of recovery and also do the work of setting a foundation for a brand new relationship. You can find people at every meeting that you go to who can attest to that fact. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make a relationship in early recovery work. Not every relationship that starts in early recovery is doomed. But the advice is there for a reason. Relationship problems are one of the biggest reasons that people relapse, and the idea that it isn't worth testing that so early in recovery, it's just not worth it. So if you do have a relationship, if you've got a spouse, or you've entered recovery, and you've got a long-term relationship that you expect to continue, the first thing to consider is you will likely have some amends to make to that person, and you'll get a chance to walk through that with your sponsor and get a better sense of what needs to happen if you go the 12-step route. Other programs of recovery also have opportunities for you to sit with your spouse and really talk about, not just apologize, but what do you need to do to fix the things that you screwed up in the past. It's also a good opportunity to reflect on the way you've been treating your relationship. Have you been just expecting it to be or happen in a certain way and being reactive to what the other person does? Or have you taken time and care to nurture the relationship? Have you been thoughtful about the way you conduct yourself and how you treat the other person? I can speak from my own experience and say that I don't feel I was doing that in my addiction. I was not being thoughtful and careful in the way that I treated the other person and our relationship as its own entity. And I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do to help that relationship grow. And it's not just about being nice. It's not just about, trying to come up with better communication strategies. It's much more than that, and it's much deeper than that. And it's really looking at, what do we need to do to create, if I'm focused on personal transformational growth, what do I need to do to bring those same qualities of growth into my relationship? So one of the most valuable things recovery has given me is the opportunity to rethink the way I approach and conceive of my relationship with my wife. It's almost like we have a new relationship, and there are times where it feels like we're dating again, which is awesome. But sometimes it doesn't feel like we're dating again. Sometimes it feels like a lot of work, which is also awesome. Relationships are supposed to be work, and I have a new appreciation for what we have and what I need to be doing to keep it healthy. So no matter where you are in your relationship, and no matter where you are in early recovery, these are good things to consider. It's important to realize that in our addiction, the way that we used people and relationships was often maladaptive. It was often malicious, And in a lot of ways, it was selfish, fearful, and we've got to get more pure in our intentions when we approach relationships, whether they're previously established or whether it's a new relationship. It's difficult to put into words how things can change as you start to develop your own sense of what's right and wrong, and then look back and realize the things that you did in the past, either in previous relationships or in a current one, that you would never consider doing again. That can be tough, but then that also gives you the opportunity to know what to do next in your relationship and the way that you want to build relationships in the future. And that's a really important part of not just recovery, but of life in general. Once I started to understand what I really felt like was the right kind of relationship to have, and once I started to get a better sense of what was the right thing to do by the people who I loved, then I felt a heightened sense of purpose in life, and I can bring that to any relationship that I have, not just the ones that I am currently involved in, but also any relationship I have in the future. And of course, at this point, I'm not just talking about sexual or spousal relationships. I'm talking about any relationship. I can look at it in terms of not what can I get out of this, but what can I put into this. And once you start doing that, your relationships with other people, whether it's sexual, whether it's spousal, or just as friends, they start to develop new depth. And that's been one of the most rewarding parts of recovery for me thus far. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.